It says, Vashem himtir al Sodom v'al Amora gofris v'esh. Hashem rained down fire and sulfur, me'es Hashem min hashamayim. And Tzvi asked the question yesterday, why the sulfur in the fire? The sulfur is a substance that burns. I think that sulfur burns, right? It's something that does. It also burns, and certainly where the sulfur lands on the ground, you can't plant anything. And the fire, the Medrash says, is because they had a law in Sodom that anybody who gives money to a poor man, they burn him. That was also one of the laws. So the Mida Keneged Mida, they got what they deserved. So fire comes down from heaven, and the Medrash says, you see, if you see how God works. If you're good, you can get manna from heaven. If you're good, the manna comes down to feed you. If you're bad, you get fire and sulfur. By the way, manna is better than fire and sulfur. So except I saw somebody just recently offered me. They have these Doritos. They have these Doritos, which are it says. Like in Hebrew, I think it's soref esh, like fiery Doritos. So a guy asked a guy at the other yeshiva offered me some of these fire-burning, blazing devil with a pitchfork Doritos. He said, "Would you like it?" And the guy's standing there like this. We want one, and I like, no, I don't want pain. When I eat, I don't expect pain. If I want pain, I could go in Israeli traffic. I don't need pain when I'm eating. I don't, no, why would I want that? No, my kids used to do that. They would eat these what do you call these hot peppers? These hot, they make the falafel sauce out of the schug, the stuff that they put on the falafel. What are they called? The peppers, the hot peppers. My kids would eat the pepper, take a little bite, and see who could do it last the longest. So the Gemara says like this. The Torah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings down the sulfur and the fire. Now I'm gonna. This is just the process. One of the most bizarre sections of the Torah now. Look at the bottom of the page. Vayal Lot mitzoar. Lot first stayed in this small town called Zoar, and then when he saw the destruction, he got nervous that it's going to get to that town too. So what does he do? Vayeshev bahar. He goes up to the mountains. Ushtei benos avima with his two daughters. Ki yare l'sheves b'tzoar. He's afraid to stay in Zoar. Vayeshev ba'me'ora hu ushtei benosav. He and his two daughters go into the cave. So then, Vatomer ha-bechira el ha-tzeira. The older one says to the younger one, Avinu zaken, our father is elderly. The ish ein ba'aretz lovo aleinu kederech al-aretz. There's nobody to marry us. So there are opinions that say when they saw the destruction, they thought the world's coming to an end. They thought the world is ending. There's one opinion. The other opinion is they thought nobody would marry them because they came from Sodom. Nobody was interested in making a shidduch with Sodom people. But either way, they're in a state where they think that the world's coming to an end. So they hatch a plot. The first one, the older one says, L'chon nashkes avinu yayin, let's get our father drunk. V'nishkeva imo, we'll lay with our father. V'nechayim avinu zer, we'll have children from our father. Let's let's get him drunk, and then he'll get us pregnant. Vatashkena esavi yayin b'laylu, so they give him wine to drink. Vatova bechir vatishka v'esavia v'lo yada b'shicha uvekuma. She lay with her father. And Lot was so drunk that it's actually got halachic ramifications. The halacha is that if you're drunk and you damage somebody when you're drunk, if you hurt somebody, say you get drunk and you break somebody's glasses, whatever you do, because you're getting wild when you're drunk, you're chayiv. But the halacha says you're chayiv unless you've got to the state of what's called shichruso shalot. Unless you got inebriated, or as the English say, besotted, to the point of Lot drunkenness, where he didn't know he's almost unconscious. V'lo yoda b'shichva uvekuma. He didn't know that she had been with him. Vayihimi mocharas. Now there's a little asterisk by the word uvekuma, because there's a dot there, and in the Sefer Torah there's a little dot, which says that afterwards he realized it, and he's criticized. Not your fault in advance. But afterwards, he realized that he realized what happened, and then the second night it happens also, and that's what Lot is criticized for. It's one thing that it happened the first time, but you knowing that it happened, and again you left yourself vulnerable, and you drank wine the second time. I lay with him yesterday. Nashkenu yayin gam halayla. Let's get him drunk tonight. Uboy shichvi imo nachayim avinu zara. She says to her younger sister, you do it. So they do it the second night, and then they have children. Take a look. They both get pregnant, and sometime later, obviously, it says, Vatelet ha-bechira ben. She has a son, Vatikra shemo Moav, which could be broken down into May Av, from the father. Who Avi Moav ad hayom. There's the ancestor of Moav to this day. The Moavites come from this man. The younger one had a son, Vatikra shemo ben Ami, who Avi b'nei Ammon ad hayom. He is the father of the Ammonites. So she calls him Ben Ami, the son of my nation. So she's a little bit more discreet. Rashi points out, because the first one was so indiscreet, later on, hundreds of years later, when the Jewish people are told, Moav, they're not allowed to destroy, they're not allowed to conquer either country. They're not allowed to conquer the nation. They conquer all the other nations. They can't conquer Moab. They can't conquer Ammon. But the Jewish people are, when they do go in, they're allowed to intimidate Moab. They're not allowed to intimidate Ammon. That means there's going to be a punishment years later because she's so indiscreet. It's like a public announcement from my father. I'm pregnant from my father. So then the Moabites later on down the line, the Jewish people are allowed to hassle them. The Ammonites, who they're not allowed to conquer, they can't even hassle. That's the storyline over here. Okay, now you should have a question here. There should be one question, one very basic question. In this whole story, you should have a basic question. They go running away from something, they run into a cave. Okay. No problem here? Nothing bothering you? Nothing bothering you? Nothing curious over here?
There were other cities, and Abraham was...
No. Something else. Something very basic in this story you should wonder about. Something like a curiosity. Just a very, very curious question. Very curious question here.
The cave?
What's that?
That they went to the cave?
They went to the cave because they're worried about Lot's hiding in a cave. He doesn't want to get killed. So he's in the city, goes to the cave. Well, something in the cave, something about the cave you should wonder about. Now, where'd they get the wine from? Where'd the wine come from? You run out of the city, hey, it's being destroyed, grab the booze, let's go. Where'd the wine come from? I told you, my 8th grade teacher once asked us, she said, what would you do if your house was on fire? What would you grab? If you could only say, wait, you're going to run out, what would you grab? She said, I would grab the family pictures. That's what she said. I remember I was enchanted by that. Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't agree with it. I said I would grab my baseball glove, but okay. But I thought that, she said, that can't be replaced. Okay. So my baseball glove couldn't be replaced. Okay. So she said, okay, here, and then the third guy says, if he's Irish, he says, grab the booze. What am I going to drink for supper? So where'd they get the wine from? Right. So there's two opinions. There's one opinion that says they happened to run into a cave, where in the old days they used to store wine in caves. So they ran into a cave, and they got into a cave which happened to have the wine in it, which is obviously they were guided into that cave. There's another opinion that the wine got there supernaturally. The other opinion, Gemara says the wine got there through a miracle. The wine showed up, right? Why would the wine? If it's a miracle, who's performing miracles? God's performing miracles. Well, if God's performing miracles, then obviously He wants this to happen. I didn't have to put wine in the cave. You got to put water in the cave. Could put nothing in the cave. He wants to put the wine in the cave. So on one hand, and he said, I don't need this nisayon is not needed right now. Obviously, this is being encouraged by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to produce what's going to eventually lead to Mashiach. And that's why the Gemara says that on the one hand, Lot, he certainly was in it for the immorality. The daughters were in it because L'Shem Shemayim. And not only that, who took the initiative in this mitzvah? The older one. Now pay attention carefully. The older one took the initiative. She's the one who's going to have Mashiach come from her. Moab's going to have Mashiach come from her. The younger one didn't take the initiative. She was more discreet. That means the older one had the idea. And the older one is going to get the reward, but even within that, you could do, there's a lesson here. You could do something very good in life, and you could have a misstep in what you're doing, which is that she was indiscreet. Who said you had to call a Moav? On the other hand, you took the initiative, therefore you were meriting to get the Mashiach. Isn't that interesting? Now, which begs another question. And this is a much bigger question. Why does the Mashiach have to come from here? You can't think of a better. Remember, the Messianic line comes from two places. It comes from Yehuda in Tamar. It comes from Yehuda, the line of Yehuda, and it comes from Moab. Now pay attention. We're going to go for a ride, gentlemen. It's absolutely enchanting. Only one rule. Can't ask me any questions about this because we're going into some Kabbalistic ideas. Not that I've learned the Kabbalah. I've studied, I've seen the commentaries who quote the Kabbalistic ideas. I don't know any more about it than you do. But I'm only telling you what the commentaries say. So you can't ask me any questions. But I'll tell you, it's an enchanting idea even at our level of understanding. Let's look at the Messianic line. Where does the Mashiach come from? Well, you start off with Lot and his daughters. All right, a little bit of incest. That doesn't sound so, doesn't sound so wonderful. And we find out afterwards, well, God was also involved, put the wine there. But at the end of the day, it's incest. There's something that certainly looks, what is the word the English use? Looks very dodgy. That's their word. It's dodgy. Isn't that the word? Right? It's dodgy. That's a bit dodgy. Okay. That's on the Moav line. So the Moav line, which ultimately reaches who? A woman named Ruth. Right? A woman named Ruth, who then marries Boaz, who comes from the Yehuda line. But one second, before we get to Ruth. That's on the Moav side. What happens on the Yehuda side? So Yehuda's first two sons marry a woman named Tamar, and they die because they wasted their seed. And then eventually the Torah in Parshas, Vayeshev, the Torah says, well, then Yehuda sees his daughter-in-law, and she's waiting on a street corner at a crossroads like a harlot. And he thinks she's a harlot, and he solicits her services, and the two of them, and she gets pregnant, and she has children from Yehuda, and it ends up becoming the line that's going to produce Mashiach from the line of Peretz. Well, that looks dodgy. And then the Medrash says, well, Yehuda, was Yehuda capable of such a thing? Yehuda's a tzaddik who, the Yitzhak, not the Yitzhak, the angel pushed him. Which, by the way, that excuse cannot be used ever since then. And no one could come along and say it was the angel who pushed me. But the Medrash says it was the angel who pushed Yehuda. That looks kind of dodgy. All right. Where does the line of Yehuda and Tamar then meet? Yehuda and Moav meet? You have this woman, Ruth, who herself was first married to a Jewish man. It was a questionable. She had a conversion, didn't have a conversion. And then there's a man named Boaz. Boaz is the leader of the Sanhedrin. And Boaz goes down to his granary at midnight, and Ruth is going to propose marriage. So what does she do? She goes down to the granary at midnight. And the Medrash says, Boaz is sleeping, and all of a sudden, whoa, there's a woman at my feet. Right? That looks a bit dodgy. And then eventually they get married, but there's a whole debate. The Sanhedrin, there's a major debate in the Sanhedrin. The Moavites can't marry a Moabite man. Can't marry a Moabite man cannot convert into the Jewish people. Now there's a debate in the Sanhedrin. Does that include Moabite women or it doesn't? Boaz says, no, the women are not included. And the Sanhedrin, the other Chachamim say, no, women cannot marry. You can't marry Ruth. She's a Moabite. She's a Moabite convert. And there's an argument with the thumbs flying. And eventually Boaz convinces everybody that he could. And they say, you're right, you could marry the Moabite woman. So he marries her. And the next morning he dies. Now even the most uncynical person, if you were sitting there, imagine you're sitting in a room and two guys are arguing about about a piece of meat. One guy says it's kosher, no, it's not treif. There was a side that shechita wasn't proper. No, it is kosher, not kosher. And finally you convince him it's kosher. So the guy who convinced him it's kosher takes the meat, he takes a bite and he chokes on it. Even the most uncynical person, I guess not. So Boaz says, yes, he can marry her. No, you can't marry her. I could marry her, can't marry her. All right, he could marry her. He marries her, he dies. The next morning he dies. Right? Right? Yeah, I guess not. Except she got pregnant. Then she continues the line. And who comes out of that line? David HaMelech. Isn't that remarkable? David HaMelech comes from that line. 1 second, 1 second, man, 1 second. David HaMelech comes from that line. Who does David marry? He marries a woman named Bathsheba. How did he marry this woman? He got her husband killed in the war to marry her. She is okay. She's not okay. She is okay. He could marry her. It was a get that was written. Now, the whole thing is dodgy. Who comes from that relationship? Shlomo HaMelech, the Messianic line. So the question is, you got the Mashiach. We're hoping very soon. Why everywhere you touch it, and we always find out, well, after the fact it was really okay, and they wanted to perpetuate the world, and she was pushed by an angel, and over there was a Moabite. In the end, with back, when they found out that Boaz's marriage to Ruth was okay, when David becomes the king. Took 4 generations till it was ratified. Till it was ratified right away. But there was a lot of question on it, and it only became with hindsight years later that Boaz was right. Otherwise, David HaMelech wouldn't become the king. And he's anointed by a prophet. And only then did they find out, oh, by the way, it was okay. Oh, by the way, Yehuda and Tamar was okay. Oh, by the way, Lot and his daughters was okay. Why is that? Why does Mashiach have to come from these type of relationships? So there are 2 explanations the commentaries offer. One is a more basic one, and one is a little bit more esoteric. The basic explanation is that the Gemara says you should never appoint a communal leader unless he has a box of reptiles behind him, which means the proverbial skeletons in the closet. Get somebody who's got some what do you call it? He's got some stuff. He's got some baggage, because by having the baggage, it will stop whoever is the communal leader from lording himself over the community. He won't become haughty. The guy's got if the guy's a blue-bread pedigree, so then, well, look where I come from. You know what? Look at your background. Your background in itself is not then Mashiach has to be able to relate to every Jew at every level. Where do you come from? You come from a cave of Lot and his daughters, so let's keep it all in a proper perspective. They'll keep him humble. That's what was basic explanation. There's a deeper explanation. You can't ask me any question. I'm only telling you what the Al-Shich says. These are the words of the Al-Shich. The Al-Shich says that there are certain neshamas that have to come into the world. See, no questions. The Al-Shich says there are certain neshamas that have to come into the world which are very high-level neshamas. One of those neshamas is obviously the neshama of Mashiach. There are certain forces, what we call the Sitra Achra, right? Forces, the bad guys, like the Death Eaters, right? Certain forces that do everything in their power to prevent these neshamas coming into the world. And the only way to get past them is by camouflaging these neshamas. Once they're camouflaged, these neshamas, that can deceive these other forces who are working against them. And therefore the Al-Shich says the neshama of Mashiach, which is obviously at such a high level, there's going to be major opposition to it, successfully getting into the world and successfully fulfilling the mission. And therefore the neshama of Mashiach has to be camouflaged and put through all these externally dodgy relationships, because when the other forces see Lot and his daughters, what good could possibly come from that? Yehuda and Tamar, what good could possibly come from that? And Rus, who's a dodgy convert, what could possibly come from that? And ultimately is able to weave its way through until eventually it's able to show up as Mashiach. So that's why it has to come from here. Now, I'll tell you a documented story. I'm looking for an Igros Moshe. I don't think we have one. It's the Igros Moshe, the 8th, the upstairs. Is there one here
Upstairs, yes.
Where upstairs?
In the English library.
I need the Hebrew one. The Igros Moshe, which is the classic set of responsa of Rav Moshe Feinstein, the questions that he answered, the correspondences of Rav Moshe Feinstein, where he goes into, he answers all sorts of long questions. So in the 8th volume, there is a biographical sketch of Rav Moshe Feinstein's life. And he was a Rav in Luban, in Russia, in White Russia. And one day he got called in. There was a man. This is documented, and I just read it again this morning to be sure that it's that I got it right. There was a man in Luban who started suffering from an illness. His tongue started swelling, and Rabbi Moshe was the Rav of the town, and they called Rabbi Moshe, and this guy was clearly on his way out. So they asked everybody to leave the room, and he said to Rabbi Moshe, I know why I'm suffering like this. Last week in the Parsha, we were reading the Parsha of Lot and his daughters, and this guy started making insulting comments about Lot's daughters, how they could behave the way that they did. And he said he was making these insulting comments. Then, on the previous Friday night, he had a dream, and he sees two elderly women coming towards him. And these two elderly women come in, and they say to him, we are Lot's daughters, and we want you to know that what we did was l'shem shamayim. And the reason that we named the first child Moav is because we knew that at a certain point in the future, there's going to be a rumor about a Messiah who is an immaculate conception. And we knew that we want to counteract that. And therefore we named him Moav, that we could have just as easily said, yes, we got pregnant and it was an immaculate conception. We could have started a story. But we purposely did this in order to let the world know that our Mashiach is very much from a flesh and blood, and that the story that's going to come later about a Messiah who's from an immaculate conception is a pile of nonsense. And all of our intention was l'shem shamayim. And because you spoke against us, you suffer the same punishment as the spies. Remember, their tongues extended and it went into their bellies. And that's what he said to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, and a short while later he died. And Rabbi Moshe said, he didn't say it is, he said what the man was saying is mistaber. There's a lot of, certainly grounds for it to be true, and it could very well be that's what happened. He didn't say for sure because we only have the man's word for it that was the dream, and so on and so forth. But the idea is certainly correct. The idea that they named him Moav, I don't need the man's dream for that. The name of Moav was a merit for them, that they're doing it because they want to counteract this future rumor having to do with the Mashiach. Now, I want to tell you something fascinating. If there was one thing that we don't know, anything, you have one opportunity now to find something out that you don't know. What we'll call the ultimate secret for you. Something that's a secret that you'd like to know, the solution to the secret. What would it be? If you could ask one question, what would it be? Okay. I would ask, when is Mashiach coming? A lot of people would say, when is Mashiach coming? That's the one thing we don't know. We only know the belief in Mashiach, the Rambam's 13 principles. We believe Mashiach is going to come, and we believe he could come at any time. That's it. We don't know when. I would love to know the solution to that. See, if that's not the only secret, it's certainly a secret that none of us know. Now, have you ever heard the concept of nichnas yayin? The Gemara says, when wine goes in, yatsa sod, the secret comes out. Right? It loosens, right? You drink and you talk. Right? You drink and you talk. Nichnas yayin, wine goes in, the secret comes out. What's the ultimate secret? Is Mashiach, right? That's the ultimate secret. Nichnas yayin, the wine went into that cave. What came out? Yotzo sod, the secret comes out. This is where Mashiach comes from. Mashiach comes from that cave. So Lot and his daughter, Lot himself is an ancestor of Mashiach, and Mashiach comes out of this cave. Okay? Now, take a look at the next pasuk. In the bottom of page 90. Are we able to, all right, we have a few minutes left. It's a bit warm. It's a bit warm. Could use a little air in here. Maybe you could turn on the things. Okay, bottom of page 90. So you have this episode of Avram Avinu. It says Avram Avinu goes off in. If you take a look, Avram Avinu goes with Sarah. They go off to the land of the Plishtim. They go off to Gerar. Now watch what happens here, because this is also a very, very strong indication of human nature. Avram goes to this place called Gror, and again the same story. He says it's his sister. Sorry, Imenu is his sister. Same story. So then it says 3 lines from the bottom. Vayishlach Avimelech melech Gror vayikach es Sarah. Avimelech takes Sarah. Again, Avram Avinu goes in, my sister. So he takes Sarah. Thanks, Ron. So then it says, Vayavu Elokim el Avimelech b'chalom halayla. God comes to Avimelech in a dream. Vayomer lo hincha meis al ha'isha asher lakachta v'iblu azba. You're going to die. She's a married woman. You're going to die. So Avimelech says, Vavimelech lo kar avileh. You didn't know. Vayomer Adonai agoy gam tzadik tarog. You're going to kill the innocent. Now watch this. 92, second line. Halohu amar li achosihi. He told me she's my sister. I'm innocent. He said she's a sister. V'hi gam hi amra ochihu. And she also said that he's my brother. Bisam levavi v'nikam kapayas. In pure innocence and clean hands. This is all, I'm innocent. Didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing, man. Right? Okay, take a look at Rashi. Find this Rashi enchanting. Rashi says, it's the right column of Rashi, 5th line. Rashi says, I asked him. He said, it's my sister. And she also said, he's my brother. Says Rashi, Gamhi, 5th, the right column, 5th line on 92 at Rashi. Gamhi. L'rabos avadim ugamolim v'chamorim. The slaves, the camel drivers, the donkey drivers, eskulam sha'alti. I asked them all. V'amruli achiyahu. They all said it's his brother. There's a brother and sister. I had a question over here. Avram said it's my sister. So why did he ask the camel drivers? Why did he ask? And if the camel driver says my sister, why'd you ask the Why'd you ask the slaves? And once he asked the slaves, why did he go ask the donkey driver? Why keep asking? What's the answer? Because in your heart of hearts, you're not satisfied. That's why you keep asking. Are you sure there's no cyanide in here? Ron, is there cyanide in here? No, you should. Nissim, is there cyanide in here? David, you didn't notice any cyanide, did you? Yeah, cyanide. Yeah, does anybody know? Jake, is there cyanide here? No. Why am I keep asking? If I was absolutely sure, I wouldn't keep asking. There's a rule over here. You're not innocent. You're not innocent. The proof is you kept asking. If you were really sure, you would have asked once, and that would have been it. Are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah, it's an attitude in life. When you're not sure, don't do it. As simple as that. You're not sure? Don't do it. Well, if you have to keep asking, then you're not at a point where you should be doing it. Don't go indulge if you're still asking. Are you sure it's got a hechsher? Who's got that? You're at a wedding. Who's the mashgiach? Do you know the mashgiach? No, I'm pretty sure it's kosher. Right? Do you know the mashgiach? You know, eventually you get tired of asking, so you just eat. It's not the way it works. Till you get clarification, till it's absolutely clear, you shouldn't be indulging. And maybe you'll hold it. Till you get clarification, you shouldn't be indulging. That's what the Torah is teaching you over here. Okay? So then he takes her, and she, he gets punished, and eventually he tells Avraham Avinu, take her, and she leaves. Then the Torah goes to page 94. Then finally we have the good news. After all the incest and all the kidnapping, so we finally get some good news over here. Right? Get some happy news. Page 94. God remembered Sarah just like he said. Hashem did to Sarah as he had spoken. What happens? Vatahar, she becomes pregnant. Now you'll notice the word pregnant in Hebrew contains the word har in it. Vatahar. What's a har? A mountain. She became mountainous. Vatahar, she became like a mountain. Is that what happened? Right? No, tahor is with the test. The tahor is with the test. This is vatahar. She becomes like a mountain. Exactly what the word is, which is obviously because women who become pregnant become mountainous. That's what happens. Yeah. Men don't. Right? Women become. Vatela tzar lavram ben lizkudav lamoid asher diber etzar elokim. So he, what do you call it? She bears him a child. Vayikra Avraham es Shem beno anolo asher yolo tzar Yitzchak. And Avraham names him Yitzchak. And the first thing he does is Vayamal Avram es Yitzchak v'no ben Shmonas Yabim kasher tziva oso Elokim. And we said the name Yitzchak contains is the name laughter. We said because it's absolutely absurd that they should have a child. But Yitzchak also means that we laugh at those who think we're not going to exist, because we know that our existence is beyond nature anyway. And therefore we laugh. We mock those who think they're going to set us down. Now, let me ask you a question. When they've been waiting for a child for all these years, what do you think is the first thing that they're going to do with the child? What do you think their attitude to this child is going to be? What do you think the Avram and Sarah are going to be doing with a Yitzchak? What's that?
Pampering the child.
Pampering him, certainly. And what's their mission going to be with the child? Why do they want to have a child?
Making him Talmud Chacham.
A good Torah Jew, right? Do you remember Yitzchak is the first FFB in history? Right? Avram and Sarah are Bali Tshuva, convert. Yitzchak's an FFB, the first FFB in history. I would imagine, every morning, Modani Lifanecha, what do you call it? Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, they're going to wash the Tilis Yadayim, probably a little yarmulke on his head. All those things. Torah doesn't say a word about it. Torah doesn't say a word about it. The first thing we find in what's funny, what's funny?
He just said something funny.
He's the first FFB in history, right? Okay, now, there are people, by the way, who put a yarmulke on the baby from the day he's born. There are people who actually put a little yarmulke on the baby from the day he's born, which can only help. What's the first thing Sarah does? Take a look at Paysach Tatz, page 96. First rule in educating, successfully instilling Torah values in your children. Vateres Sarah es ben Hagar HaMitzri. Sarah sees the son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman, Asher Yolda Avram Mitzachek. Rashi, the art scroll translated as he's mocking. Mitzachek. His name is Yitzchak, and this one is Mitzachek. Right? He's a mocker. But Rashi takes it a little stronger. Take a look at the top Rashi, right column. Mitzachek. Right column, 96, top column, top Rashi. Lashon avodas kochavim. There's a lashon of tzchok that's associated with idol worship. Kimoshe Nemar, as it says by the golden calf, vayakubu litzachek. They got up to litzachek. So that's a word that's associated with idol worship. Davar acher, next line of Rashi, is another association. Loshon Gilui Arayos, it's a word associated with immorality. Kimodetema litzachek bi, Mrs. Potiphar, that's what she accused Yosef of doing, litzachek bi, immorality. No, we're not done. Davar acher Loshon Ritzicha, it's a terminology used by murder. Kimodechsiv Yakumu na ne'orim v'yisachaku lefanenu. There's an episode in Nach where they get up to entertain, they have some entertainment, they end up blood spilling. So what does it mean, Sarah? What did Sarah see in Yishmael? What's Rashi telling us? She takes a look at this Yishmael, and she sees potential idol worship, immorality, and murder. The big three sins. So what does she do? Vatomer la'Avraham. She doesn't waste any time. Goresha ama hazos vespana. Get rid of this maidservant and her child. Ki lo yirash ben amzein b'ni Yitzchak. First thing that we find in Sarah's concern for Yitzchak. Now, obviously, they educated him and they learned with him, and the Medrash says Yitzchak and Avram learned in the same base Medrash together. Obviously, but what the Torah tells you, what's written in the Torah, in the words of the Torah, first thing, what's the Torah say? Get rid of the negative influences. First thing, get rid of the negative influences. This is something parents have to remember. You expect to be successful with your children. You teach them this and you teach them that. And you give them exposure, and especially in our day and age, where the exposure to idol worship, immorality, and murder is right on a little screen. Then parents wonder, how is it, I get calls all the time from parents. My son is in cheder, he's in school. He's not interested, he's not motivated to learn. Of course he's not, why should he be motivated to learn? Kids able to watch movies, and he's able to this and that, the other thing. And this is in black and white. Remember, the words of the Gemara are in black and white. He's got the world at his fingertip. He's got Yishmael at his fingertips. Right? Says Rashi, you want to succeed with your children? First thing, make sure you get the proper environment for the kids. Get all the negative influences out of there. Then we'll worry about what you instill in your children. And look at Avram Avinu's reaction. Avram is very upset about his son. Oh, I got to get rid of him. Got to say, remember, this is Avram's son. Now he's got to say, send them out. Sorry, what do you call it? Sorry, man, says send them out. And Avram's not happy about that idea. Don't be upset. Whatever Sarah says to you, obey her. Look what Rashi says over here. Got to be really careful with this one, gentlemen. Rashi says on where is it? Right column, about a little more than halfway down. Pasuk Yud Beis. Shema b'kola, obey v'chaz Sarah. Listen to Sarah. Says Rashi, b'kol ruach hakodesh sheba. She's got ruach hakodesh. Lamadnu shehoya Avraham tafel l'Sarah b'nevius. We learned that Avram was secondary to Sarah in level of prophecy. How do you like that? How do you like that? Feminists never complain about that, Rashi. Right? Avram was second to Sarah in Nevius. My mother, she's living me well, she always used to quote this Rashi. So just remember, the Torah says Sarah was greater. I told you, I used to say, my mom, the Torah points out the exceptions. And I'm just my luck. My wife's first name is Sarah, so just my luck, you know. So Avram Avinu has to send Yishmael out of the house. Okay, now take a look at Perek Chaf Aleph Pasuk Yud Tes. So they go out to the desert. And the first thing that happens is, still on 96. They go out to the desert, and Avram Avinu gives them a certain amount of water, but Yishmael has got a fever, so they run out of the water. And right, Pasuk Tesvav 15, Vayichlu habayim min hachemes. The water finishes from the, how does he translate a chemes? A jug, a gourd? How does he translate? A what? A water skin, okay, like a jug of some sort. She puts the child under one of the bushes. She goes and sits at a distance, far off, as far as you can shoot an arrow. I can't bear to see the child die. She starts crying. I can't bear to see the child die. So I heard somebody once said, there isn't a Jewish mother in the world who would do this. A Jewish mother in the world isn't thinking, who's Hagar thinking about right now? Child's dying of thirst. Who's she thinking about? Herself. I can't bear to see the child die. That's what she's thinking. There isn't a Jewish mother in the world who does that. Child needs me near her, I'll stay near him. I don't care how much it's going to cost me. That's the difference in attitude. No Jewish mother would do that. And so she starts crying. And then the angel comes to her and says, don't worry. Why are you crying? Pick him up. He's going to be a big nation. Last point, gentlemen. This applies to you every single day. Vayivkach Elokim es eineha, top of page 98. God opens her eyes. Vatera be'er mayim. She sees a well. Vatelech vatamale es achemes vatashkes. She fills it with water. She gives it to drink. What doesn't it say happened? It doesn't say God created a well miraculously. It says God opened her eyes and she saw the well. What does that mean?
It was there the whole time.
It was there the whole time. Say you didn't see it. When you're learning Gemara, didn't it ever happen to you? What does she find? What was there all the time? There was water. Water is always a metaphor for what? Torah. Didn't it ever happen to you? You're learning the Gemara, you read it twice, 3 times, you don't get it. And then the 4th time, like, goes, that's what it means. Oh, that's what Tosos means. It happens all the time. It means it was there all along. It's there all along. Same words. Just that you put in the effort. Now God decided you deserve to have your eyes opened. It's not that you figured it out. It's not that I figured it out. I put in the effort. Then God says, okay, now you've earned the assistance. Now I'll open your eyes. The water was there. The water was there all along. It's a rule in life. I heard an interesting thing from Rabbi Salinger, that sometimes a person's got a problem and you just think, I don't see any way out of this. And then the solution is rather simple, and all it takes is having your eyes open a little bit. That's why sometimes it helps to go to ask somebody else. We're so tzahitz and bent out of shape because of the issue that we can't even see it's right in front of our nose. The solution is right in front of our nose. Can't even see it until you go and ask somebody else. And so you say, oh, why didn't I think of that? You didn't think of it because you're so tzahitz, your eyes are closed. Can't even think straight until somebody else tells you, and you say, hey, that's pretty simple. That's a simple solution. Right? And just just do this, that, or the other.